Today I'm going over the controversial topic about how EVPs are really radio waves that we're picking up with our recorders and all. It's always a fun argument, isn't it? Oh, you paranormal investigators, you just need to do your research. All those EVPs or radio waves are so retarded. Yeah, sure. You know, we're just so out of touch, we have no idea what a commercial or non-commercial radio broadcast sounds like. We've never ever listened to one of those before. It's funny how there's not a lot of EVPs out there in general where, you know, we get bits and pieces of music, you know, bass, drums, guitar, singing, you know, string instruments, wind instruments, all kinds of percussion. How come we don't get those? How come we're not picking up bits and pieces of commercials? Oh, buy today and we'll throw in blah, blah, whatever. How come we don't get any identifying call letters from radio stations? Thanks for tuning in and listening to RTRD Radio. Where are all those? You know, that's pretty strange. Not to mention, I read this article a couple of years ago. I don't have a link to it or anything. It was on Yahoo, which they kill their stories in no time flat. I should have saved a screenshot of it, I guess, because I can't even remember what the guy's title was. I think he was some kind of a radio engineer. But yeah, he was a radio engineer, and the piece was writing for EVPs not being radio waves, because he said, I've never, 20 years of being a sound engineer or whatever his title was, never heard of this so-called sound leakage that's supposedly, you know, really rampant everywhere. Now, I'm not sure if this is the same thing or not being a tech indoor sound person myself, but there's this magazine that I have called Rock Video. One day in their letters department, they had someone ask what crosstalk was when they're in a recording studio, and they said that it was some kind of leaking of sound from one channel to the other or something. Like I said, not being a tech person, I don't know the proper terms, but they usually have efficient ways to deal with it. Now, for those tech people who are like, oh, I know what you're talking about. That's not the same thing as EVPs or radio waves. Okay, then fine, you know, if I'm not right on that. But if I am right, all these dissenters are saying, oh, EVPs are just radio waves. You do your research. Well, you're the one who hadn't done your research, because this was back in the 1980s. You're trying to hang on from something from 20 years ago where they said that they had decent ways of dealing with it. Come on. Now, I'm sure the next thing that a skeptic would say is like, well, okay, fine, but radio waves don't just mean literally a radio wave from a radio station. Yeah, no, there's like military radio too. How come I've never heard of an EVP ever of some military sergeant barking orders to someone? I don't know a whole lot of lingo and all, but how come I've never heard of an EVP saying stuff like, you know, base clear, base out, you know, what's your 20 or whatever? We never hear of this. Also, there was a post on a forum, which, for one thing, I could have sworn I had copied this down, saved it in a document somewhere, but I didn't. And then when I went back to the website to get it, the website was gone. I hadn't been there in months, which is a real shame, because someone had posted on there, and this is after I've been posting for months about EVPs. This one guy just finally spoke up after one post, said, well, I'd say that most, if not all, so-called EVPs are radio waves. And before I could respond, someone else who actually was a tech person, shocker there, he said to the poster, obviously he's not an electronics person. He does not have an electronics background. Gee, you're kidding. And again, not being a tech person, I really wish I could remember the terminology he used. Don't really understand it. About the only thing I do recall is organizations have very strict guidelines and pretty strict safeguards in place to prevent this from happening. Because if stations and other broadcasters violate these procedures, they could be pretty heavily fined by the FCC. Yeah, heard that? I mean, why would someone risk having all these stray radio waves going everywhere? And that makes no sense to me. And then the other thing is, yeah, people with baby monitors. Are there EVPs of babies, and then they say on the video presentation there were no children in the cemetery or whatever? Oh, that's right. I have seen those presentations, crying babies, and they swearing there were no babies around. So that's 1 out of 3. I have a pretty weak argument, wouldn't you say? Reading this here, it says it's impossible for a digital recorder to record a radio transmission. A radio transmission is an electromagnetic signal which is at a frequency way higher than what we can hear, and for us to be able to hear the signal we need a radio wave receiver to convert it into something we can hear. Digital recorders don't have radio wave receivers and so cannot record voices from a radio signal. So in other words, we'd have to hear the radio signal of shells if it was picked up on a digital recorder. Because, I mean, how many digital recorders have receivers in them in order to be able to intercept these radio transmissions? I mean, I get it. You know, sometimes you do very occasionally get these transmissions. Like I heard of a person from an email who got this radio transmission through his guitar amp. Another one got something through the speaker on his Centipede arcade game. I got one myself that came out of the speakers out of when I was on the internet once. I went on a website or anything that had sound, just came out of nowhere. I mean, you know, that does happen, but it's rare. If EVPs were radio waves, they would be rampant. We'd be hearing them all the time. I've never gotten one off of my recorder. I think the number of recordings on my recorder now is over 600. I've only gotten one thing that sounded like it could have been after I transferred it on the computer, but I didn't hear it. I mean, you got to hear it in the first place, don't you? The problem is so rampant, you know. The FCC would be finding places left and right for all their leakings. Well, I already went through all this. No need to waste any more time on it. Let's just continue on here. Now, not being a tech person, I'll admit that these questions weren't really answered. But, you know, you think about it, these are people who actually have experience. You know, a guy said he was a sound engineer or whatever for 20 years. Another person said, oh, the poster obviously doesn't have a background in electronics. Any, if not all the stuff I outlined is true, then that's pretty pathetic. You know, people say, oh, they're just radio waves. You're not doing your research. You know, you're no better than anybody else. And also there have been these experiments performed. Paranormal investigators asking, yes, I know, alleged spirits questions. And then they get these, yes, I know, alleged EVP answers back. But the spirits got correct. Like asking what color clothes the investigator was wearing. I want to know how on earth it is possible for some radio DJ / sound engineer / any radio station personnel, some lady with a baby monitor, military radio personnel, etc. They are up to God knows how many, yes, up to hundreds of square miles away, because I've got radio stations from Chicago, from here in Houston before. So how on earth can these radio personnel people see inside our houses and answer these questions correctly that are being asked? I really want to know how on earth that is possible. The thing is, I came up with this challenge a couple of years ago. I realized a couple of years isn't much time, but hey, you know, hear me out here. Let me finish. I don't have a website yet to put this up in writing, so this will have to do for now as I'm bringing this up again. Originally, I made this challenge on a website, and it's now gone, where I said about how severely disgusted I am, because this is in regards to people who supposedly know so much about EVPs being radio waves and such like that. You must know something that we don't, obviously, in regards to how people, these unseen people who are up to hundreds of miles away, can answer questions. How can they see inside our places of residence and mess with us when they're really spying on us? Now I'm monstrously disgusted at this severe invasion of my privacy. I'm going to sue the absolute living hell out of someone. I assume it's my wonderful government, since you know so much about how all this works. So this is my proposal / challenge. Tell me what it is I need to do and who it is I need to sue for this, because this is absolutely disgusting. This is disgraceful. Since you know so much, you should know how to defeat these people. And you're doing everyone on the face of the entire planet, or at least those countries that can sue, because some countries don't even have lawsuits, by letting these disgusting entities get away with this spying. Let me know who it is I need to sue, how on earth I'm supposed to gather this information that I'm being spied on. I will give you 70% of whatever lawsuit money I collect. Yes, 70%, the number after 69. Not 17% is in the number after 16. I realize I don't have a very good speaking voice. No, 70%. As I said in the description there, you might want to open up a game of Solitaire or something. There's not much to look at. No, I'm saying right here in writing, 70%. An oral contract is legally binding, at least here in Texas, but they're almost impossible to prove. No. Again, look at the screen. I'm saying this in writing. Someone can explain to me who I need to sue, how to sue them, how to present evidence that I'm being spied on, and how to win this. And once I collect the money, I will give you 70% of that money. It's there on your screen, right there. It's in writing. But, of course, there's always a but. I have to collect the money. Can't go through this big old trial now, and then after I won, I can't have the defense say, oh, well, we're appealing the case. We're going to hear it again. No. Once I collect the money, you know, I've got the check cashed, I will give you that 70%. And I'll hang out my paranormal hat too. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot about that. You know, since I finally made a major blow against the retarded paranormal investigators, I will delete all my videos and my channel. And no, I'm not going to come back as someone else. Oh, I'll pretend like I'm someone else and resume my investigating. No, I will never come back again. And I've got a lot to lose here. Right now I've got over 170 subscribers, over 170 friends. All the numbers go up and down as I get some new subscribers, and then the older people delete their channels because they can't handle the flaming and the trolls. I've been here for almost 4 years now at the time of making this recording. I tell you, I'm not going anywhere. So why don't you put your mouth where my money is, which will be your money at some point. I mean, what have you got to lose? You got thousands, maybe even tens, maybe even $100,000 to gain. And you'll deal a major blow to us ridiculous paranormal investigators. So, well, till then I'm going to be waiting. Probably literally forever. Because at some point I'm going to pass on, turn into an alleged ghost that doesn't exist. And imagine after a while, I'll be chilling and be like, hey, remember that time like 500 years ago you put up that offer to prove that we exist? That ever happened? How about that James Randi Foundation? How about that? Hey, look down there at that graveyard that you were buried at. There's some guy walking around with a lot of electronic equipment. He's probably one of the investigators. Hey, let's go down there. Let's mess with him. You know the drill. He's talking to the microphone saying, help me, I exist. And I'll say, no, you don't. Tell him I see live people. That'll confuse him.